Welcome to Pera's Playbook. This is your host, Alex Pera. Let's open up our playbook and see who our guest is. Please enjoy. Welcome to episode 172 of Pera's Playbook. Today we're joined by Kelly Garni. He's a founding member, the original bass guitarist for Quiet Riot. He's also a photographer and just an all-around artist. We're going to talk music and art and history and all kinds of good stuff today. Happy to have Kelly here. How's it going?
Hey, Alex, I'm doing pretty good. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. I'm a lover of music and I always like talking music. I feel like it's something that I can talk about for hours on end and there's a lot of people who don't share that passion for music. So
Well, I don't know about that. I've been around a long time, and believe me, there's people who are just obsessive about it, which is great. Um, I love the fans, and when they're as passionate as they are about everything, particularly for anything I'm doing, I really, really appreciate that.
yeah, right. And I've always been a person that I don't like silence. So like I've got to have music on. I'm not as much, I'd like doing podcasts. I don't listen to a ton of them because I'm always doing my own. But music, I've
Yeah.
always got to have music on. But I've talked to some people, yeah, when I'm in the car, the radio is off and it's just quiet. And I
That's
don't like
that's
that.
me too. Yeah, I don't listen to music while I'm driving, even if I
Yeah.
drive, 8 hours straight or something. I'm not
Wow.
listening to a thing. And yeah, I prefer silence too.
I'm always afraid that I'm going to hear something wrong with my car if I don't have music on. The music will shield the noise, but if there's no music, oh, there's a clunk. Something's wrong.
Exactly how I feel. I want to hear how my car is running.
So let's kind of go back to when you were a young musician. Who were your musical influences?
Well, I met Randy when I was 11, so of course, that was in 1970 71. And so we were listening to, what was current then, and certainly from the 60s was still kind of bleeding over into the 70s. So we were listening to a lot of Hendrix and Deep Purple, things like that. And, all of it made an impression. Even Chuck Berry, I mean, we were listening to that. Um, it was there were some pretty good influences for a couple of young kids who were really hungry to learn.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to take a history of rock class when I was in college as an elective, and I really enjoyed that class because I mean we went back to the 30s and worked our way all the way to modern times and how everything evolved and looking at similarities and what grew out of what, and it was really awesome. Really see the roots of rock and roll and where it came from.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's been an interesting journey. I've been involved with music for, oh gosh, nearly 60 years. Hard to admit that. Um, but um, but yeah, it's evolved quite a bit into what it is today. No doubt about that. But I'll tell you what, there is still a great appreciation, as there always was, for music from the past.
Oh, yes, for sure. And it's made it easier with technology to appreciate music because it's so accessible. You can find any song from any era on YouTube or Spotify or whatever your source of music is. So I think it's made it much easier for people.
Yeah, certainly in that regard, yeah. But there's things that technology has definitely ruined about music, and particularly in the recording and
Yep.
sadly and recently in live appearances of what people are doing with having backing tapes and things like that, which is just really calling in your show.
Yeah, no, it ruins the authenticity. If
Yeah,
I go to a live show, I want to hear it doesn't have to sound perfect. Um, which I mean, if you're sitting listening at home, yeah, it's going to sound perfect because it's a studio recording. But I want it to sound raw and authentic when it's live.
yeah.
So
And
yeah,
and if
I'm not
somebody
for
makes a
that.
mistake, you want to be there to see it.
Right. Yeah. So, and I like going to concerts. I've gone to a lot of concerts, and I always like when I can tell that it's authentic. And even older artists, I would rather hear their voice. It's not as perfect as it was, but I know that's their real
Yeah.
voice.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a lot of the older artists are keeping it real, with some exceptions out there to be sure. But for the most part, and I don't go to a lot of live concerts. If I go to a show, it's generally because I know who's playing, and that's the only reason I'm really there. And I've already heard what they've done so many times that I don't pay too much attention. I watch the audience a lot. That's
Yeah.
by nature. By nature, I'm a people watcher, so watching the audience is actually more fun for me, and gauging how my friends are doing on stage, which you can certainly tell by a fan reaction, an audience member.
Right. For sure. Yeah. So, how did Quiet Riot come about? Like, what did you guys just decide? Hey, we're gonna start a band, and where'd the name come from?
Well, basically, pretty much every band is starts off with, "Hey, let's start a band." And in me and Randy's case, it at first was a learning adventure in that we really well he knew what he was doing. He was taking lessons, which is going to be an important factor in my Australian shows that I have upcoming in December. But for the most part, we just had a strong desire to be as good as those guys, the people that we were listening to. And once we had actually gotten pretty good, we started putting together bands, and we kind of went into the whole deal thinking it's probably not going to last, but it's fun for now. And we're talking, kids that are playing in backyard keggers, and things like that, playing the junior high school bands, local battle of the bands, things like that. Um, and none of it at the time felt like progress to us. We had a very definite idea of where we wanted to be musically and who we wanted to be musically, which is a very important factor in getting into a career, if you want to call it that, like that.
Yeah, for sure. And you guys had I guess not a lot of early success in the States, but it was more overseas. You guys had some success in Japan. It was pretty hard to land a record deal at the time.
Yeah, it was very, very hard because, quite honestly, the record companies who were back in those days your main support, it's not so much like that anymore. Now, you want to be a big guy on TikTok or Instagram or something, and so back then, record companies were the people that you really wanted to make an impression on, and the record companies were kind of confused. They didn't know if people wanted, uh, David Bowie or something, or if they wanted, the Bay City Rollers. Unfortunately for me and Randy, particularly in Quiet Riot, we were drawn between both of those choices. We wanted to be Alice Cooper and David Bowie. Our management, who's another component of this equation of getting into the business, had other ideas and pushed us more towards the Bay City Roller uh, image and type of music, more of a poppy feel. And that just really wasn't in our blood, and it was hard to have in our hearts whenever we played it, but we did the best we could.
Yeah. Why do you think you guys had success in Japan of all places? That kind of surprised me when I read that.
I'll tell you what, it surprised the hell out of us. Um, because we had gone to, I don't even remember how many record labels that uh, could have released our stuff domestically here in the US to our fans. We had built up a very large fan base here in the United States, particularly in Hollywood. And it just, you couldn't get a record company that would help you put out a record so you could give it to these fans. They could buy it. it just was impossible for us. We went to somewhere between 30 and 60 different labels, and every one of them said no, except for one. They said yes, and we started doing our first album, and the next thing you know, they went bankrupt, and that was the end of that deal. What we had then was some desperate managers who really had spent a lot of money up front to get this album done, and based on the promises of this record company, and then they failed. So they were pretty desperate, and in that desperation, they ended up in Japan, which baffles me to this day. But it was a good thing in that the Japanese came through for us, and forever I'm grateful to the Japanese. I love the Japanese. I've been there twice. I was just there last November and did a show, and they're wonderful, wonderful people. It just didn't make sense to us. And they told us that our records were released in Southeast Asia, is what they called it. And we're like, where's that? And they go, well, it's Japan. And it's like Vietnam. And we're like, and Malaysia, you guys can't walk down the street in Malaysia, you'll get lost. And okay, well, that's, something. It was hard to even call it, that's a start.
Yeah. Yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah, we got your
Yeah, it
record
was
deal.
confusing. But it got the record done. In fact, it got two done. And, and we did do well over in Japan. We were in every magazine, and the Japanese just really, really loved us. And we had something that we had never had before, and that was bags and bags of fan mail from Japan. And me and Randy were the only ones in the band who religiously responded to every one. Sometimes you'd be like all day and all night responding to all these letters. And and it was flattering, it was inspiring. I mean, you got these little Japanese girls saying, I want to marry you and all this stuff. And we're thinking, yeah, well, let's meet, if I can get over there. That then came problem number two. We couldn't get any tour support to go to Japan. And although we were told every week, you're going to Japan, you're going to Japan, you're going over there with Cheap Trick, you're going over there with this band or that band. And you ended up basically keeping a bag pack so you could be ready to go to Japan. Just in case one of these days they said, okay, you got to be at the airport at 5 in the morning.
So you finally got a following, but I mean they were on the other side of the world. So
Yeah, you never met them, and you really didn't know who they were. I mean, back then, I mean, if you'd have had things like Zoom and FaceTime or any of the various ways on social media to communicate, see each other, that would have been great. But we didn't have that. We just had these beautifully written letters that were written on this beautiful paper, and to us it looked great. It looked like they spent a lot of money writing us. These weren't just pieces of paper. They were works of art. They drew things. They drew us. They sent us little gifts in the envelopes, and you just were pining away, going, God, I'd give anything to go to Japan, but it never happened.
wow. And that's got to be something that doesn't happen very often now. The fan letters, in the digital age, I would imagine that handwritten fan letters are a thing of the past. Artists don't get them, movie stars, whatnot.
Yeah, that's very true. Usually, if I get a handwritten fan letter, there's usually some sort of a transaction involved. Either I've sold them a book, or they oftentimes they'll send me my albums, and they want them autographed. So I'll sign them, and then I mail them back, and they always include a nice letter. Oh, thank you so much. I've been a fan, for so many years, and this means so much to me. I love Randy and all this, and that's basically the kind of fan letters you get now.
Yeah. Yeah. Right now, and now there's so much. video stuff, I mean, people can, I mean, they can send a message on Instagram to their favorite. They can send emails and videos to their favorite bands and movie stars and whatnot.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's all changed so much. And if you ask me if it's for the better, I'd say, it's got its advantages and disadvantages. It meant so much to us back in those days to get a letter all the way from Japan. That was a big deal to us. And you'd look at the stamps on it, and they were so pretty. And, it just was, you felt like people knew who you were, but you didn't know who they were.
yeah, right. Yeah, that is a big honor that people that have never seen you play live on the other side of the world, like you said, they
Yeah,
spend their own money, they put all this effort, and they send you fan mail.
that's the thing. It was the effort that they put into them. Back in those days, the proverbial Japanese schoolgirls in their little skirts, um, who would enclose photos of themselves. So that kind of, at least put a face on the letter. But they learned how to write English in school, but they didn't learn how to speak it. And I had
Yeah.
this one fan. Her name was Nobuko. Hi, Nobuko. I still talk to her. Um, she wrote me so much, and so I said, well, send me your phone number, and she did. And I had no concept of what time it is in Japan. I'm a dumbass kid. I don't know. I don't know. It's like the next day there and all that, you know. And so, it was like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And I said, today's the day. I'm going to call that Nabucco chick. And I will, in fact, she made a little doll of me. Yeah. I
Wow.
mean, that's pretty personal.
Yeah.
That somebody would go to all this, and if you can believe this, I got this when I was about 16 or 17 years, so over 50 years ago.
Wow. That's cool.
And I still have it. It's still very much intact. Some things are not quite that accurate anymore without giving away too much. Hey, still got the body, but yeah, and there you go, little bottle for you. And so I called her up, and of course, she lived with her parents because she's younger than me even, and they don't speak any English at all. And also, what went out the window was any thoughts of just how much this phone call to Japan might cost. I mean, this was back. We grew up in the valley, and if anybody knows any geography of the valley, if you called from Van Nuys to Burbank, it was a toll call, and your parents got the phone bill, and then you got yelled at. What's this? What are you talking 30 minutes to somebody in Van Nuys for? And so, when the phone bill came for this Japanese phone call, it was ridiculous. And my girlfriend who took care of all the bills, and I'm not good at that. I'm good at giving them the money for them, but not at the paperwork part. Um, she's like, "What the hell?" And of course back then, it wasn't that much money. It was only like $15, but we're talking 1977, and $15 was like you could go to a nice steakhouse for that. Um, so yeah, all that made it really, really a distant kind of relationship for us, not only as people, but as a band and our connection to the fans. It just wasn't something, uh, that as tangible as a bunch of girls mobbing you at the airport, tearing off their clothes. That's what we wanted, but it was not going to
Right.
happen the way it was going.
Maybe if you got that trip to Japan, it would have happened when you landed at the airport and you got out. But like you said, you never got it. So
Well, there might have been 25 or 30 of them there, you know.
Yeah.
They might have had some signs, you know, in place
Yeah.
they can hold up, you know, and they're mobbing you for autographs as you walk through all the police that showed up too to control this chaos that's going on at the airport because those guys from LA are showing up. Um, yeah, it just never happened back then, and it's just the first time I went to Japan, which was in 2011, and did a couple shows over there. Um, there wasn't any girls at the airport for that. There was one, the one who brought us over there. You know, get, had to settle for that. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah, you guys wanted like when the Beatles came over, the British invasion, that's what you guys wanted.
now we're talking. This is what we want. This is the thing. We want to really feel the love here, but nah. You know, you get off the plane, you're expecting, something like that. You don't have it at all. Oh, then by the way, you got to go to customs, and boy, is that a pain in the ass.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So when you were out of the band, did you stay connected with them? And like once they started having major success, did you listen to the music and keep in touch, or were you just kind of like not connected?
Well, when I left the band, and which is a story in itself, uh, I was thrown out, by the way, but at least did it in spectacular fashion, pretty much setting the bar for, if you're going to get kicked out of a band, this is how you do it, kids. Okay. You don't mess around. You go for it. So I got kicked out really well. And I was in the band. I was the sort of troublesome one. I was the guy who always got in trouble. I was a bad kid, and it wasn't because I thought I was some sort of a rock star. I was just that way anyway. And so uh, once I did leave the band, I left it all behind. I went and saw them one time with their new bass player, Rudy Sarzo, who's a very good friend of mine today, and watched the show. And I said, great, I'm glad they're continuing on. Of course, I was still friends with Randy, but definitely not friends with the other two members of the band. And but they didn't matter to me. Only Randy mattered to me because he was my best friend I had had since I was 11, and that's all I cared about. So I saw him the one time, but I did sort of a 180 in my life. I had done music all my life up until that point. I was 20 years old at this point, and so I cut off all my hair. I went to paramedic school. I graduated. I had a job waiting for me. And for the next 10 years, I ran ambulance calls, working in the back of an ambulance.
Wow. Yeah, that is a complete turnaround from rock star to ambulance.
Yeah, well, you see, I felt like I hadn't seen the rest of the world or life or anything. I grew up in Hollywood. We were kind of stalled in Hollywood. We got to play a few places outside of Hollywood, but uh, not that often. And we generally were somewhere in Hollywood every weekend, or minimum every 2 weeks. And so Hollywood was what I knew. Hollywood was where I hung out. When I wasn't playing, I was hanging out, somewhere in Hollywood, at the Rainbow, at the Starwood, at the Troubadour. There was another club called the Cabaret, uh, that I eventually got some trouble there, sort of. More just showing up there on a fateful night caused me to basically get kicked out of the band. And it's all in a book I wrote, which, you know, I did this so fast, I didn't have time to grab my two books. They're right over there. Let me get them. Because, self promotion is very important.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now we got the books. We have the book.
Okay.
Uh, I eventually wrote this book. It's all in there. The whole sordid, ugly, dirty, grimy, sleazy, and I might add, potty mouth filled story. It's all in here. So, uh, yeah, so now I was out of the band. I sold my bass. I didn't want anything to do with music ever again. When I was working ambulance, absolutely nobody knew anything about. They didn't know that I, spent my whole life playing in Hollywood.
Yeah. Yeah, you need a fresh start.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was a fresh start. And I'll tell you what, when I started doing that job, I loved it. I was, boy, I loved it as much as I loved playing music. It
Wow.
was just as, it was exciting because with music going on stage, playing in front of a bunch of people, you're going to get a big adrenaline rush. And that's what I got working ambulance. And it was actually very much the same as being in a rock band because uh, you show up at an accident scene, there's a big crowd around, you go to where the accident is, everybody's watching you. Oh, look what the paramedics are doing. Oh, they're getting that guy out of that car. Oh, I don't know if they're going to get him out of that one.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I never thought of it that way. Yeah. Well, we'll talk about this because we're kind of on Quiet Riot. And then we can talk about your other endeavors of photography and art. But in 2022, you ended up hitting the stage with Quiet Riot for the first time in 43 years to play Slick Black Cadillac.
Yeah,
How did that come about? Did they reach out to you?
they did. And it was somewhat of a mutual thing, but yeah, Alex Grossi, who's been in Quiet Riot for a very, very long time, another good friend, um, he called me or he sent me an email, and it was New Year's Eve in Las Vegas, which is a big deal pretty much in any big town, I suppose. But he said, "Hey, we're playing, why don't we get together and play?" And I said, "Oh boy," because I'm not the kind of musician anymore who like sits around and practices anymore, but it's a riding the bike kind of a deal. Once you've done it, especially as long as intensely as I had to do it, you don't forget it. And so, it was very easy for me to just swing right back into that mode. Although I will admit to being absolutely terrified at the prospect of going up on stage with Quiet Riot and playing in front of a whole lot of people. It was terrifying to me. But I made it through. I did a good job. There is video of it out there. I didn't make any mistakes. I was just petrified. But when it was all over, I said, "Damn, that was great." That was coming around full circle for me.
Yeah, that's cool. I'll have to try to find that video. Is it on YouTube?
Yeah, yeah, it's on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a great full circle moment to be back with the band and one of the hit songs that started it all.
Yeah, and sadly, and first let me say I fully endorse the new Quiet Riot. People can call them a copy band all they want, but that's just simply not true. Rudy's an original member. He replaced me and played the same places I played with the same people I played with. So it doesn't get any more, original members than that, unless you're me. But they have Rudy, and Alex is again has been Alex Grossi, the guitar player. He's been in Quiet Riot for like the last 18 years or something. It's been a long time. And he played with Kevin, who's sadly not here anymore. And he played with Frankie, who's also sadly not here anymore. And so that's an original member to me because Quiet Riot really never gave up all these years. There were spells of absolute desert where nothing happened, nothing grew. But they always came back, and people are still happy with what if they do a show, people walk away happy. They still do a good job, and this version of Quiet Riot does a great job. It's the old saying, if it walks like a duck, acts like a duck, it is a duck. That's Quiet Riot. They are Quiet Riot. They sound like Quiet Riot. They act like Quiet Riot. They look like Quiet Riot. They're Quiet Riot.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I saw Great White 2 years ago. They have a new lead singer, and they were fantastic. I mean, same similar situation, guitarists, original members, and I was just impressed by, like, man, that guy's 70 whatever years old, and he's just shredding on the guitar. I mean, different lead singer, but it was a great show. I think it
Yeah,
was last
yeah,
year I saw Styx, and they've got drawing a blank on his Lawrence. Is it Lawrence Gowan? I think he's got the lead, and I mean Tommy Shaw is still there, but it was fantastic. They put on a great show. So yeah, people get crabby about that kind of stuff, but
right. These bands have been around so long that they've transformed themselves into brands, and so you know you have original Coke, and you have new Coke, and you have different other kinds of Coke. You've got Coke Zero, and it's just like Levi's too. I mean, you've got 501s, then you've got the wide fit, the baggy fit, the slim fit, and it's a brand, and so the ingredients have almost become irrelevant. That's a hard sell to rock bands who want to look at that guy. Like if I went and saw Led Zeppelin, I gotta say, I don't want to see some guy up there trying to be Robert Plant. I want to see Robert Plant.
yeah, right. No, I understand why people do, and I have the same thoughts sometimes.
Yeah,
Do I want to go see this band if the lead singer is not there? And
right.
for Styx, it was easy because they had Tommy and Lawrence, so it was like, okay, they got half of the original singing, and they played some Damn Yankees stuff, which was great.
Yeah,
And when I saw Great White, they were with Slaughter, and Slaughter had Mark Slaughter still. So there were
sure.
other factors for me, why I went to
Yes.
those shows. But yeah, they were great shows. Great shows.
Actually, Slaughter's one of the few bands I go and see because when the 80s rolled around, about the mid 80s, and heavy metal was starting to emerge, or at least, you know, early versions of it, the speed metal stuff and all that kind of stuff. Um, I was a single guy living in Las Vegas, where I worked a little bit of ambulance for a while, and and then I decided, well, um, first of all, Las Vegas is a very hard place to meet girls, unless you got a bunch of money. But I said, maybe I'll play some music and I can meet people. I was transplanted from LA and I didn't really know anybody up here. And so, I thought, okay, music. I'll start playing some music again. And by way of another one or two bands, I ended up in a band with Mark Slaughter called Excursion. And that was a lot of fun. And Mark's a great guy, as was the drummer Anthony White, who is primarily these days in a band called Cold Sweat, another excellent band. And we had a great little band, and we recorded an album which hasn't been released, which I've been bugging Mark to do. But they're one of the bands that I will go see, because, again, to me, it's not about seeing the band; it's about seeing my friends.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I loved them. They were great. They put on a great show. Mark put on a great
Very
show.
consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And he was great with the crowd. And yeah, they sounded wonderful. Yeah.
yeah,
They got a great repertoire of songs. I love Slaughter.
yeah. Well, good. That's good to hear that.
I'm all over with my music. I love, I have a lot of friends that, they're just, I only like modern country and that's all I listen to. Me, I'm all over the place. I love 80s country. I've been on a big fix of like listening to a lot of Jim Croce and Gordon Lightfoot and Bob Dylan recently. One of my favorite artists is Barry Manilow. I mean, I'm all over the board.
Yeah, I've met Barry Manilow, and he's a very nice guy.
Yeah, I saw him live last summer, and he's 81. It's the favorite concert I've ever been to. It beats out all the rock concerts. He was had a great stage presence, and his voice for an 81-year-old man. I mean, it wasn't as powerful as it used to be, but it was Barry, and
Yeah.
yeah, he was a phenomenal performer, just
Well,
fantastic.
that's good to hear. I like to hear when people do a great job. So I'm glad you enjoyed that show.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about some of your other. I know you got into other, types of art, photography, one of them. So you're kind of an all-around artist: music, photography, art. All kinds of different stuff.
Yeah, my mind's always sort of in an artistic mode. Um, I even found ways to be artistic, working in the back of an ambulance. So, um, and that's hard to explain. It seriously is hard to explain. But without going into a big long story, um, it there was some art there. There was definitely some art, and a lot of it was art of survival because that was a pretty tough job. And but growing up in Hollywood, you're not going to be some wussy kid out there, especially when you grow up. But yeah, so I found myself in 1994, and I write about this in a book, which I'll show in a minute. You guys are gonna love the cover. Um, I was divorced. I had no self confidence. I couldn't pick up a girl. It was easier for me to pick up a cigarette butt off the street than it was for me to pick up any kind of a girl or even get them to look at me because I had no game. They they would take one look at me and I was defeated from my divorce. I was broken. I had no self confidence. Girls would look at me and go, as if. And that was it. So I said, what am I going to do about this situation here? And Las Vegas can be a very, very lonely place. It's a fast moving city. And if you're not up to speed and you don't have the right cards, which I sure didn't, you're going to be a loser. And that was me right here, put it here. And so I said, well, let's see, what can I do here? And I said, I was thinking about it. And I had done a tiny, minute amount of photography when I worked ambulance. And I had bought a camera. I had a real camera, a real 35 millimeter camera. And so I started thinking about it and I said, photographers, those guys, they meet a lot of girls. They got a lot of models around, and pretty girls and it's a big fashion thing and all that. I think I'll try that. And what happened from there was it turned out way bigger than I could have ever dreamed or imagined. And it led to the greatest 20 years I had of my life. And I started out, I just needed somebody to take pictures of. So I also needed somebody to go out on a date with. So I would go to the mall and I would hang out and I would dress nice. And there's all these pretty girls in the mall. And since I had absolutely zero to lose and no fear of rejection, having become quite accustomed to it, I would walk up to beautiful girls and I would say, hey, listen, I'm a photographer. You're a pretty girl. You're a model? And they'd go, no, not yet. I thought about it. And, and I'd say, perfect. How about, listen, I'm an amateur photographer. How about if we do a photo shoot? Won't cost you a dime. In fact, after we do the photo shoot and you get the pictures, I'll take you out for dinner even. We could look at the pictures. Well, they thought that was a great deal, and so did I. And so so we would set the date, and we would go. I'd take them to all these nice places we have around here in Las Vegas, and we would do this photo shoot. There was just one problem: is I really didn't know what I was doing at all. The only thing I was super good at was acting like a photographer. I knew how to tell the girls how to move and everything. And I really think that came from when I was in Quiet Riot. And we did so many photo shoots there. Being on the other side of the camera is as much a learning experience as it is to being on the other side where you're actually taking the pictures. It's just I didn't know the technical side. And back then, you actually had to know how to take a picture. You had to know what film. You had to know how to develop it. You had to do all that stuff. So it started off a little rocky. I met some great girls, some of whom are still friends to this day, if you can believe that. And I would take them out and we'd do this photo shoot, and it was a lot of fun. I made it fun for them. I had a good personality for it. Again, having that attitude that I had nothing to lose, I was very, very comfortable because I'm like, they reject me, I don't care. I'm used to it. And so um, the thing that went wrong with this whole plan was when I got the pictures all developed and I set up a dinner date at a nice restaurant and I showed up with their pictures. And quite honestly, most of them didn't turn out at all. Not at all. Once in a while, I got lucky because I just turned dials and stuff and said, "Yeah, let me adjust this." And I, I was making it up as I went along. I had absolutely no clue what an f-stop was or what a shutter speed was, or I didn't even know what ASA mean as far as film. And so um, I'd say, "Yeah, well, we'd sit down for dinner and I'd say, I think I need a new camera. I just had it fixed a couple weeks ago, and now it's doing the same thing it was doing. Man, I had a list of excuses this long. But I'm on a dinner date with a girl, and it's not awkward because we already know each other, so we're both comfortable. And that was a nice factor right there. So they'd look at the pictures, and I could just read their faces, and I would see, massive amounts of disappointment. And that's where things would go downhill quick. And I would hear things like, well, my dog takes better pictures than these. I'm sorry. And I'm like, your dog probably has a better camera. And, so that's how it would go down. And then, I would never really hear from the girl again, except in later years when Facebook came along and stuff like that. Then I started actually hearing from a few of these girls. There's like 5 of them that I've known that long, since 1994. And I did this hoax of a photographer bit on them. But um, anyway, so I said, okay, this is working really good. I have to learn something about this. If I can get good at this, I think that what's going to happen is going to be phenomenal. And so in my mind, I was like, I'm going to take such good pictures of a girl. She's going to want to be my wife. And so I went to the library, which was all I had. I didn't have the internet or anything. And I started getting books and studying. I made friends with people at the local camera store. And the next thing I knew what I was actually doing. And then from there, it was just a practice makes perfect thing. I was still able to get girls the same way. And I even upped the quality of the girls. I was like, okay, well, now I know what I'm doing. I felt a little bit more confident to go up to a absolutely stunning girl who probably was a model, and I had no fear because I did at least know what I'm doing. So that's what I did. And it turned out many, many of those girls actually were models. And I'd take them out and we'd do a photo shoot. And now it was a completely different story at dinner. You know, the girls would be looking through the picture. Hey, these are pretty good. And I'm like, what do you know? This is a lot better than the way it's been going, because before the girls would just leave in the middle of dinner or even before, and I'm stuck with a check, you know, and but I would get their food to go and then I'd take it home, and, you know, so I didn't lose that bad, but I was sitting there alone, and of course some left in a huff, and everybody around me saw this scenario. A little embarrassing, but nevertheless, I trudged on. And so these girls are looking at their pictures, and next I built my own dark room. I learned how to do that, and I was shooting a lot of black and white, which is what models were using back then. And it turned out some of these girls, again, actually were models, and they were with local modeling agencies. And one day, a modeling agency, the biggest one in town, called me up, and they said, "Hey, we want to talk to you." And I said, okay. And I actually thought I was in trouble, because I actually did get a couple of these girls before all that to do some nudes. I don't, they wanted to do them, or I'm a great salesman. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just that charming. Whatever it was, I did do some. So I thought, uh-oh. I took a naked picture of one of their models and they're pissed. That's what I thought. And I said, so what do you want to talk about? And they go, well, we've had a lot of girls bringing your work in here and we really like it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And they're like, no, no, no. We want you to come in and have a meeting with you, and bring your portfolio, which I didn't have, and bring some business cards too, which I didn't have. And I said, okay. So I just went to Kmart and I got this stupid looking photo album, and I put a bunch of pictures in it. And back then, they actually had a machine at the grocery store, of all places, where you could do a business card right there. Boom! You just sat there and waited, and and it was a couple bucks, and you got like 50 cards. And I said, that'll do it. So I got some business cards, and uh, I went to the meeting, and I took my stupid looking portfolio, not knowing what a real one looked like, and we talked, and they said, okay, well, listen, we'd like to send our models to you to get some photos done. And they said, what do you charge? And I said, I don't charge anything. And they said, well, if we're going to send you girls, you're going to have to charge them money. And I'm like, okay, that's not so bad, because by this time I had spent so much money on cameras and camera equipment and the dark room, and you know, just other stuff I needed to do all this. And I was like in debt up to my ass, like crazy in debt, like 3 house payments behind, and going to repo my car any minute, and everything's, you know, 2 months behind, gas bill, power bills, everything. And I was working in a music store at the time, and you know, I didn't make enough uh, to afford all these things I was buying. So the thought of, you know, sending me these girls, and now I'm hanging out with them and I'm getting paid, this is starting to shape up to be a pretty nice deal. So uh, true to their word, you know, they did. But they, while I was there, they said, "Did you bring some cards?" And I said, "Yeah, I sure did. Here you go." And gave them the cards, and they put me in this little thing that had all the business cards of all the top photographers in Las Vegas who did all the models, and there was about 7 or 8 of them. And I knew who they all were. I was watching other photographers at this point to learn, and all of a sudden my cards with those guys, which made me feel like, okay, I'm in the same league as them. That's a huge jump for me. And they said, so what do you charge? And I had no idea what a photographer charged. No idea. When I was in bands and stuff like that, managers paid them. I never even saw a bill. So uh, I said, you know, I don't really know what I charge. Well, what do those guys charge? And they said, well, this one's like $75 for 3 looks, and this one's 125, and that's for headshots and 2 look, and they're coming up with all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of money. I was making $260 a week, um, in the music store. And this guy here, he's $75 a roll, and back then a roll of film was $2. And I'm like, wow, $75, to shoot one roll of film? That's insane. And so I said, well, I'll charge $25 a roll. And I thought I was robbing anybody to even get that. And so they said, are you kidding? That's all you want to charge? And I said, yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with that. Kind of took the pressure off me. And so they said, okay, so what do you charge for an 8x10? And I said, oh, I just give those to the girls for free. And by this time, I was actually doing pretty good with girls. I had, a few girlfriends just because I shot pictures good. I said, wow, that's better than money almost, except now the girlfriends cost you a bunch of money. So on top of everything else, I got 4 or 5 girls I'm taking out to dinner, taking to shows and all this. And so, this second source of income, which is what it initially was for me, was sounding pretty good. And so that's where we started. And as far as the 8x10s, they said, don't don't give the 8x10s away, charge them. And they go, what do you want to charge? And I go, $5. And they said, make it 10, they'll pay it. And I'm like, wow, okay. And so, and that's where it started. And the next thing I know, my phone's ringing off the hook. And it got to the point where pretty soon I couldn't work at the music store anymore. I couldn't afford it because girls were like booking me and they were like, okay, I'll do 10 rolls. And I'm like, I'm $25 a roll. I'm going to spend the day with this beautiful model and I'm going to make as much as I make in one week, trying to sell some guy a practice amp or a pick. So that's how it started. And then from there, it just like, I built a studio in my house. I started there. And then, and I got a lot of local recognition. I got well known. I, I mean, it happened so fast. I wish things would have happened that fast in the band. That would have been phenomenal. But this was kind of more fun, and it got ridiculous to the point where I outgrew my house. I had to rent a building. The next thing I knew, I had a secretary, and it just was nothing but a success story for the next 20 years. Well, except for the last 5 years. That's about when they invented digital photography. And I started to see a huge decline in my business because of that. Because now I had competition. Because now anybody could be a photographer. Um,
We end the episode on what you're currently working on. Kind of go off with that.
well, I am supposed to be and would like to be retired. But I find myself once again a musician. And I find myself kind of in Quiet Riot, but not in Quiet Riot. I'm in the Quiet Riot where I'm the only one left standing. I'm basically a one-man band now because really there's two Quiet Riots. There was our version that was me with Randy Rhodes and Kevin DuBrow and our drummer who doesn't even want to be mentioned. Um, but in the 80s, right after Randy found success with Ozzy Osbourne, people were asking, where'd this kid come from? This Randy Rhodes kid. He's great, great. Where's this kid been all our lives? Well, he was in this unheard of, unsigned, loser band in Hollywood called Quiet Riot. And all of a sudden, everybody knew the name Quiet Riot. So Kevin very wisely reformed Quiet Riot with new people, with Frankie Banelli, Carlos Cavazo, and Rudy Sarzo on bass in yet another version of Quiet Riot. And and they had a big hit, Come On, Feel the Noise. We've all heard that, even at the supermarket. Um, Bang Your Head. These were huge, gigantic hits that many, many people in the heavy metal realm give credit to kicking open the doors for fans to enjoy heavy metal music. And Quiet Riot is the one they credit. So, um, and that's great. I think that's wonderful. And I applaud Kevin for doing what he did and making and becoming the success that he did become, because he had a hell of a life, however short it was cut, as well as Randy's. But for me, it's turned out, that the old Quiet Riot, only now people are going, oh, I gotta have that album, but at the record store it's $500, and because they're collector's items. So being last man standing, I'm out there giving it to the, masses, the ones that'll have me. And I do travel around the country and certainly other countries, um, playing old Quiet Riot songs. And I do it with local players who I love to do it with, who are definitely fans of Randy and our old stuff, which, again, now, people are going, hey, that wasn't that bad. And too bad we couldn't get it, 50 years ago. But, now, if, if they want it, it's a collector's item and they have to, really pay for it. Um, so that's kind of my role once again in Quiet Riot. I'm sort of the retired senior citizen version of Quiet Riot.
I I wouldn't say that. Senior
I
citizen.
would. To me, it's kind of like I'm not a Quiet Riot. I'm a quiet outburst.
That's funny. That's one way to look at it.
It's the way I look at it. I mean, I don't have my teammates to make it what it should have been in the first damn place if
Yeah,
management would have left us alone and left us to our own devices. Van Halen got big because nobody went to Van Halen and said, no, you guys got to do this. You got to wear this. You got to look like this. You got to have songs about this and that. Nobody did that to them. They said, just be Van Halen.
right.
If they would have said that to us, it would have been a different story.
Yeah, yeah. I can see how management they think they know exactly what everyone wants to buy, and they're gonna mold you into their will, and you lose your creative edge.
You lose your heart. You definitely sell your soul because you know these guys got big fancy offices in Beverly Hills, and they drive fancy cars, and they live in Beverly Hills, and you even go to their houses once in a while when their wives will let them invite you. And so you're a little kid. So uh, Queen put it best, mesmerized by what you're saying. You know, when they were talking, and they did that song about Death on Two Legs, when they sang a song about their manager, a lot of the lyrics in there I could really identify with. And so yeah, so I mean, we were impressionable kids who said, well, they're rich, and we have $1, and so we better listen to them, and that's what we did, and it was wrong,
Yeah,
wrong, wrong, wrong.
you wish you had a redo.
Oh boy, do I! But I am the redo. I'm just sort of a diluted. Well, you know, it's kind of like Quiet Riot was the shit. Our version could have been. I'm the runs.
No, jeez.
But I bring it. I bring it. You know, uh, Sometimes not with always with the greatest of players, but I'll tell you what. their heart and souls into it because they love this music, and to play with me is a big deal to them. And so, I mean, if I had a chance to play with like Jimmy Page or something, or uh, some other big guitar player, I would think that was great, But they think that because I was in that realm of an era of Quiet Riot, I'm a big deal, and I'm like, okay, I can't argue them out of it, so I just accept it. And so I go out and I try to give them a show that's good, and we'll do the old stuff which they've grown fond of, and they have fun playing it. And sometimes these guys are ranked beginners. In Japan, I did a 12-song set. Every two songs, I had different guys on stage with me that I had never played with before, but they knew the songs, and so we just did them. Um, I'm going to Australia in December. I'm going to be in Brisbane, Melbourne, and Sydney on a boat. Don't mind. Um, and That's going to be a really top-notch show because there's a really, really super, super hot Van Halen tribute band out there called Van Hager, and they're going to be my backup band. So now I'm going to be playing with some really pro people.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. How long are you going for?
um, my shows are, well, I'm only playing on Friday, December 5th, Sunday the 7th, and Tuesday the 9th. And so really I'm performing 3 nights, but I'm flying into each show. I've got travel time between each show, and there's that. I also have at least a week of rehearsals prior to going out to do these shows, and uh, prior to the rehearsals, I have I'm hoping almost a week, 5 days of recovering from the 19-hour flight, which,
Yeah,
when you're an old man, about kills you.
I was gonna say that'd be tough as a young man.
It hurts, man. It hurts. And uh, and then after I'm all done with the shows, I'm going to take a week to rest from that. So I'm going to be there actually about a month.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and you'll get to enjoy some of it, after the jet lag.
Right. Yeah. And that's the benefits of it. Uh, I have a Q&A session. This is one thing that's going to be really, really, really great about these shows that's never, ever been done, and I can only do it in Australia. And that is, I'm going to have Randy's original, the only guitar teacher he actually ever had.
Wow.
And this guy taught him from when he was like 7 years old. So he's going to be there because he lives there. He's going to be doing a Q&A session with me. So fans are going to find out a real lot about Randy Rhoads. You see, it's not me they're so much interested. I'm an interesting character, to be sure. Um, but I'm the one with the stories, so that adds to it. But also, they want to know about Randy Rhoads, and so I bring an experience. I bring a tribute. I bring a way to honor him, and I give fans the opportunity, to have some input in all of it, and not to mention them, but also the other musicians too, who are going to be happy to play with me. So, and I'm very happy to play with them. So it's a win-win for everybody. These shows are going to be really, really fantastic and off the hook. And because a certain person also lives in Australia, if I can, if he's healthy, I've already convinced him. I took care of that. It's a health issue, but if he can make it, that's going to be a very big deal. I just don't want to blab his name all over the place yet.
Yeah. Well, I think that sounds really cool. Sounds like it'll be a really exciting, great experience.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds fun to me, and I'm staying with this guy, the guy that put all this together for me. I met him when I was over in Japan. He was over there with his band on tour. They're going to be playing as well. Snakebite Whiskey is the name of his band, and they're pretty popular over in Australia. And so I'm going to be staying at his house. He's got a nice piece of property. He's got a beautiful guest house. He sent me pictures of. He says he's got kangaroos and koala bears in his yard. He's got a big piece of property. And I'm thinking, yeah, I just want to sit on the porch whenever I don't have to do anything. And
Yeah.
so, and he says, yeah, we'll be doing a lot of shrimp on the Barbie. And I'm like, that's a real thing, huh? You guys, you do the shrimp on the bar. Oh yeah, yeah, we do. And I'm like, great, I love shrimp. I hope they got these like big giant shrimp, or something. And but yeah, I'll definitely get an experience. And that's really the big payoff for me is the experience. I'm getting old. I'm 68. You know, when I die, which will probably be maybe after I get back from Australia, because I think this trip's going to about kill me. But at least I can say, hey, man, I really lived. I had a great life. I had a blast.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it sounds like it'll be an awesome trip if you can survive the
Yeah.
jet lag.
Yeah. Yeah. That's going to be the thing. And it is painful what's the longest flight you've ever been on? Let's interview
um
the interviewer here.
6, 7 hours. It was Philadelphia to Ireland. Longest flight I ever did. So six,
That's
seven
that's pretty
hours.
damn far. What is that? Like 8, 9 hours?
I don't think it's that long because we
Really?
went from Chicago to Philadelphia to Ireland. So like it really broke it up. I feel like it
Yeah.
was maybe 7 hours from Philadelphia to Ireland, something like that. Flew through the night, but I was I was in high school, so I feel like the jet lag didn't really affect me. I
I didn't feel that way either. Both times I've been to Japan, I didn't feel like that at all. Even though it's tomorrow there,
yeah,
but when I got there, I felt fine, and that was a 12-hour flight to Japan to Tokyo, and I made it pretty comfortably. My plan was to sleep on the plane. I brought plenty of drugs to facilitate that. Didn't even phase me. I was awake the entire time, and I really was fairly comfortable. But the trip coming back was only 9 hours because of the jet stream,
yeah,
and so that flight, for whatever reason, uh, it was extremely excruciatingly painful for me, and just in my legs. I have trouble with my legs anyway. And I mean, I went up and pretended to go to the bathroom like 19,000 times just so I could walk.
yeah,
Um, so it's that's pretty hard on a person. And then when I get to Australia, it's also tomorrow there, but it's like tomorrow way late, and God only knows what time I'm going to get there. I don't know what day. It's even having phone conversations with all of them over there is very difficult because I never know when to call anything.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that being crammed on a flight with your legs can't stretch. That's terrible.
But it's going to be good to see all the fans. I have a lot of friends in Australia. The version of Quiet Riot that I was in definitely enjoys a worldwide status. I have friends all over the world. I can go anywhere in the world. I can go to India and I can find some guy, probably his name is Sabu, and he'll put me up in his house and one of his wives will feed me. I don't know, and I'll have some curry. And so that version of Quiet Riot enjoys the same sort of worldwide fame that you know the very successful version
Yeah,
attained.
yeah, and we could say that you are the most interesting man in the world with your stories.
Always wanted to be that guy.
Yeah. Well, Kelly, it's been a pleasure talking to you and hearing your story. Wish you the best of luck with your Australian flight, and thanks for hopping on.
Thank you, Alex. I had a great time chatting with you today, and I really appreciate the invitation that you extended to me. And again, to all the fans out there, thank you all so much for you know the love for Randy and what we did when we were kids.
Thanks for listening. Please stay tuned for more episodes soon.